class on one-on-ones and interviewing, what to do when you are in the door. My name is David Kirkwood. I have 15 plus years experience in the oil and gas industry, 10 years in leadership experience. I am a hiring manager and I'm also an executive coach. And with me today is...
Hi y'all, I am JenGaudet. I am a business strategist and coach. And a little bit about me, I come from the medical profession. I have owned multiple businesses, ran multiple businesses, and have been in a situation where I have done extensive hiring, interviewing. I do a lot of business development. And so I coach my clients on these kind of skills all day, every day. We are super excited that you are here joining us today, and just a little bit of housekeeping items. Number one, let's talk about the mute button. We're going to go ahead and ask that everyone who is not David or myself be muted while we are doing the presentation part of this session. So when it comes time for questions and answers, you will be allowed to unmute yourself so that you can actively ask the question, or if you don't want to appear in that fashion, we also have a chat function. So if you'll go up to the three dots, in case you're not familiar with Zoom, you can pull up a chat. And what I'd like for you to do is everyone pull up that chat right now. Depending on the device that you are using, it will either say, have an option for you to chat with everyone or to chat with all panelists versus all panelists and participants. What our request is that you set it to everyone or to all panelists and participants so that everyone has the benefit of your question. That would be very helpful, because as we get questions throughout the presentation, we'll try to pepper in some of those answers, and it gives everyone else participating an idea of where that content came from. We did have quite a few questions come in before the session, and so we will address all of those in the Q&A portion of this presentation. So we thank you very much for helping us to help you. Once again, there's also a raise hand function. So when we're doing Q&A, if you would like to appear live and ask your question live, just hit the raise hand. That's either under participants or under the three dots for more. It just depends on the device that you're watching this from. And there's a little thing that has a hand and it says raise hand. That's the way that we can see that you want to be on live. Conversely, you can just pop in the chat, hey, I want to ask a question live, and we will be happy to bring you on at that time. So we are here today for one-on-ones and interviewing, what to do when you're in the door. Last week, if you joined us, we talked about building relationship capital. We talked about presence, what the first impression looks like, how to carry yourself, dressing the part, making eye contact, being prepared, practicing and visualizing so that you can show up and command respect with your presence. We also talked a lot about active listening. Part of that was verbal backtracking, mirroring, repeating what was said to you in a way to ensure that you had perfect understanding, asking open-ended questions so that you can dive deeper into the relationship, and most importantly, listening to understand rather than to respond. These are all skill sets we discussed last time. If you would like the replay and have not had the advantage of seeing that yet, go ahead and pop in the chat. We'd be happy to email that to you. Finally, we discussed adding value and how important it is, no matter whether you're in a one-on-one, you're interviewing, or you're just building a relationship, that we add value to the person across the table from us. What that does is it fosters our expertise if we're sharing any knowledge. It fosters the understanding that this is a reciprocal relationship, that we're not just in it for us. It's so critically important when we're building relationships. So if you, once again, if you missed last week's session and you didn't have the replay, go ahead and contact David or myself. I'm gonna put that information on the screen. If you wanna contact either one of us, we are here for you and we will send that replay link. For today, we are ready to dive in and really get into the nuts and bolts of how to show up in a one-on-one, how to show up in an interview, because the beautiful thing behind this is the skill sets are the same. Whether you're meeting one-on-one for a business opportunity or to get your foot in the door for a potential interview, those skill sets are the same that are going to apply to when you actually get to the interview. So we will be there for you. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. Feel free to take a screenshot of this, and we will, of course, send you a copy of this as a replay if you are live. Without further ado, are you ready to dive in?
Yes, let's get started. So again, so we'll talk about one-on-ones and interviewing. So why develop one-on-one and interview skills? You may be familiar with John Maxwell, one of the gurus in leadership. I myself am a John Maxwell certified coach, speaker, and trainer. And from John Maxwell, 80 to 90% of your relationship building is going to happen in a one-on-one. And so this is also going to enhance your closed loop communication skills. So if you're thinking you send an email and it's done, that's open loop. Closed loop is making sure you have a mutual understanding between the two parties. Very critical in engineering and technical professionals. I would say 90% of a project is how well you're communicating and how well your messaging is understood. So this will also help you with networking. When you're networking and building relationships, a lot of that is going to happen one-on-one, and then meeting more people one-on-one. And as you practice that skill, networking with people to find that next W-2, it's also inherently going to increase your sales skills, just learning and listening. We'll also learn a little bit later on in this presentation about how employers think about candidates. What do they care about? And by you understanding what the employer cares about, it'll help you to better prepare and plan for that interview. And in addition, some of the questions that we got this week about this topic was how to communicate effectively with recruiters, right? So a recruiter is a person in between the individual candidate and the hiring manager, and so there could be a communication breakdown. And so how do we deal with some of those things? So I guess we'll dive right into the first part of the topic and start perhaps with one-on-ones.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about one-on-ones, it is critically important for us to be focused. One-on-ones are the building blocks of our relationships, whether it's a one-on-one with a recruiter to really dive into what is it that you're looking for, what is it that you hope to achieve in your next job, or what it is that you would like to focus upon for your next opportunity, or whether it's meeting with someone who knows the hiring manager of the opportunity you're looking at. Regardless of that, one-on-ones are the building blocks, and it's essential that we prepare, we practice, and we visualize our success. Particularly if you are an introvert or you're not exactly super confident about your one-on-one skills, here are some things that you can do to up-level your confidence and to really improve your presence when you show up, because as we spoke about last week, the first impression, you only get one opportunity to make a first impression. So practice and visualize is going to come in. Let's talk about preparation. Do your research. It is incredibly disrespectful to the person across the table from you if you walk in and you know nothing about them other than their name and maybe their company. So I am personally giving you permission to stalk their LinkedIn, to learn a little bit more about them, maybe to see what skills they've highlighted, look into the company that they work for, and have some idea of what it is that they have and bring to the table that you're excited about. So do your research. Have questions prepared. It is incredibly important to show up and have a couple of questions, open-ended questions that can be the facilitation of the conversation. Have a clear goal behind your one-on-one. So if you're meeting with your child's soccer teammate's parent who happens to be in an industry that you want to get your foot in the door, know that your goal is to build that relationship. You already have a little bit of a non-professional relationship, but now you want to build a professional relationship with hopefully an opportunity to ask to get your foot in the door. So having that clear goal is very important. And finally, visualizing the outcome you desire. Many, many, many times, we always have that worst case scenario. What's the worst thing that can happen? They're going to slam the door in our face. They're going to think we're not prepared. We're not very confident. And that is actually very detrimental to our confidence and to our ability to connect. So if you visualize the outcome you desire, not the worst case, but either the most likely or the best case scenario, and you play it out in your mind immediately before you have the one-on-one. This is particularly impactful for introverts. So what you do is you see yourself prepared with the questions that you're going to ask. You see the interaction going in the manner that you want, and your ask might be, hey, I want to meet the hiring manager in this company, and they actually right on the spot connect you. That would be an amazing best case scenario. So play that in your head, just like athletes do. A mental rehearsal can completely change the way that you show up and that you enter into that conversation. When you're at the table, active listening is key. We went extensively into active listening in our prior workshop, so we would be happy to provide that for you. So we're gonna make sure we active listen. That means listening to understand, not listening to respond. Connecting, finding out what their values are, and shared values between yourself and the person across the table. Shared experiences, that's a way to foster more of a connection. And it doesn't have to be business related. It could be related to anything. It could be a shared sport team that's favored. It could be you worked on a project and they worked on the same kind of project and you were just talking about the technical details. It doesn't matter. But if you have a shared experience, it's a great way to improve your rapport. Adding value. I cannot stress this enough. If you come to the table in any interview or anything and all you do is have, I call it commission breath because it's known, like, have you ever gone to a car lot and the person's just following you and you're like, I just want some space, I want to look, I'm exploring, I'm learning, and they just keep pushing. If we come to the table and all we want is that ask, then we're going to have that same sort of energy about us and it's going to be off-putting. So make sure you come with, how can I add value to you? What is it that I can do to support you today? What is it that you're looking for? What is your goal? And maybe you might not have the answer yourself, but you sure can say, you know what? I don't know the person who you want to meet, but I know somebody who does. Let me connect you. So thinking outside of the box about how you can add value. Or a classic example that David actually just shared with me was he was on the phone in business development and the person was asking about some safety guidelines. And this was right before OSHA put out the safety guidelines. And so he said, you know what, I don't know, but I'll talk to my safety guys and get back with you. And he followed up, closed loop communication. He followed up after the fact with his safety personnel once the guidelines were released and shared it with the person he had the one-on-one.
And so in that specific example, one of the things that will surprise you is how do you add value? And so for my particular instance, it was for business development. But if you're looking for your next W-2, it could be you connecting with someone who works at that company and then finding out about things that matter to them. Maybe you know a person, maybe they're looking for a financial planner and you know a really good financial planner and you have a conversation with the person. They say, hey, I know we were having this conversation. Can I introduce you to my friend? Would that be of value to you? So that has nothing to do with technical or engineering, but you're adding value to the person. And those kind of actions over time build your relationship capital, which can help you learn some more detailed information about the positions within those companies.
Absolutely. And finally, once you've added value, the ask is the most important part of your one-on-one. If you go into a one-on-one, you have no idea what it is you're going to ask, then you're not going to come away with it, and it's going to feel like wasted time almost. Which I will tell you that just because you ask doesn't mean you get. Sometimes it requires a series of one-on-ones or a series of interviews. I know when I was interviewing for hire, I would interview 3 and 4 times before I'd make a decision because I want to make sure I have right team as so critically important to me in my organizations. So when you go to your one-on-one, know what your ask is. If it's going to be, you're going to ask for an introduction. If it's going to be an ask to get your foot in the door, make sure that you say, hey, listen, I'm so appreciative of your time. If you have already added value, great on the spot. If not, listen, I know I didn't know the answer to this question that you asked or that what you're looking for, but let me talk to my people. Let me talk to some people I know. I think someone might be able to help you and I'll be happy to follow up. And then say, it would really be beneficial for me If you know who is a hiring manager at X company, or if you could introduce me to your friend Y, because maybe you guys met on LinkedIn and you see that the person you want to know is friends with this person. So this is where the preparation and the knowing what you're asking for comes into play. And it just really emphasizes the importance of the preparation going into any kind of one-on-one conversation, because when you come prepared, when you come in presence, and you come with that confidence and you know what you want, that ups the ante on how you show up with the person across the table. They have more respect for you. They are impressed because you've done the research and you've come prepared, and they feel like you have respected their time, which is the most important part in building this relationship. So without further ado, let's dive into the interview.
Well, I think first we'll talk about communicating with recruiting. So some bullet points here are getting the granular details. A lot of times hiring managers will have what's called a boilerplate job description, and they're talking in generalizations. One thing you can do if you're talking with the recruiting company is to ask, what's the most important skill set for that hiring manager? Oftentimes, if a position has been out there for a really long time, it's often the case that could be a strategic hire for the company, or it's because they're looking for a rare skill combination. And so you may say, well, how does that apply to me? Maybe it's some reflecting on your skill sets. Maybe all you've done, say, is electrical engineering, and you've worked with power plants or something like this for most of your career. But maybe also you know a little bit how to organize or design structural steel, as an added benefit. So if you were to do an audit of your resume, are you showing all of the value adds from all of your experience? There's something to be said for conciseness, but you also want to make sure that your resume is matching to the position. If you're taking your resume and just kind of putting it out there to whatever position's out there and it's not a match, your chance of success is going to be really low. So you want to make sure you're matching your skill sets to what the position is. And what's really important is to demonstrate results on your resume. So you might say something like, I saved the client this much money because I turned in my deliverables and didn't use 1,500 hours of my labor budget, for example. If you have those kinds of results and you're not sharing them, your resume is not as powerful as it could be. Another thing is to correlate skills. If you're trying to get into a different industry, what are some of the experiences that you've had that can correlate? That can be technical, although technical tends to get very specific in terms of getting to matching a job. And so it might mean that if you're going into if you're an electrical engineer in oil and gas, and then you're wanting to go into transmission and distribution, for example, that could be challenging. It might mean that you have to learn new skill sets to match. But maybe you have the soft skills that they'd be looking for. I led a team of 4 engineers, and I was able to delegate this task, and afterwards my team member had this success in terms of results. My team member saved on their budget by 15%. Those kinds of powerful bullets are very helpful. And so let's segue into the interview portion. So we want to prepare. And so what is the best way to prepare is really it's intention setting. And so your mind and the thoughts that you think influence your beliefs and then your behaviors. And so think of when you drove into work. I know we're in COVID right now, but have you ever remembered a time where you didn't even realize that you got to work? That's your subconscious mind working. And so you have the ability to program your subconscious mind. And since you have that ability, why not have positive intentions that you would say daily to get you in the right frame of mind? And it could be something very simple. I will succeed at this interview because I have practiced 1,000 times. And you say that to yourself, then the challenge is, I want you to sing it to yourself. And that might be a record scratch for people in the room. And I would bet that it would be very uncomfortable. But if you can get to where you're singing your positive intentions to where that's not uncomfortable, when you say it, you'll be 10 times more confident. It is so important to have the right attitude, the right frame of mind, because your body language and how you show up in the interview is totally set on how your mindset is. You also want to know your value systems. And so what are value systems? How accountable are you? Do you take ownership and pride in your work? Do you value team members and working in teams? What are the core beliefs that you share? When you're doing research on the companies, do your core beliefs match the companies? And then can you prepare open-ended, powerful questions to ask those companies? Hey, company A, I understand that you're employee-owned. What is the most important thing about being employee-owned to you? And then you get a wealth of information back from them. Now, ideally, you'd want to ask those questions before the interview and get that answer from someone who works in the company. Then you're extra prepared. You know their value systems. Because what is it that a hiring company is going to want to do? They're going to want to hire someone like them. So how can you show the employer that you are like them? That your own personal culture, your own personal brand matches with the company. It's absolutely critical. So more practical things is to predict the questions and find a partner. So a lot of interviews you'll find, maybe they'll have a behavioral style interview and there'll be a panel. Maybe it's not just the hiring manager. They might ask one of their lead engineers or maybe another department manager from another department, because they will all have different perspectives about the potential candidate. So you want to sit down and predict what are the questions that they will ask me, and expect a curveball. Expect that you will not be able to 100% prepare, but then practice them. Find a partner, sit down, make the setting as it would be in the interview. Some interviews can be informal, where the table is set and maybe you're at a 45-degree angle with respect to each other. If you make it to where you're front facing and you're orthogonal to the person, that's a little bit more pressure because it feels very formal, right? I would even recommend dressing the part. Practice as if you were in the setting to make you more comfortable once you get to the setting. You're definitely going to want to have your questions prepared, and insightful and well-researched is so important. You're going to want to go look up at that company. What are some of the projects that they've done before? What were the challenges that they experienced in those projects? Do you have people in your network today that know about how those projects went? Do you have skill sets that could have solved those challenges? That would be tremendous value to add in an interview. And here's another hard one. Get in front of a mirror, practice, ask the questions to yourself, and then do not blink and follow your own eyes and practice to yourself. It's one of the hardest things you can do. This is also very good if you're teaching yourself public presentation skills as well. If you can get to and this takes practice, but if you can get to the point where you're speaking to your own eyes in the mirror and you become comfortable, you'll be 10 times more confident once you get into the interview. Along with intention setting, your beliefs influence what is going to happen in reality. And so you visualizing the interview itself, you've practiced it and you've predetermined the setting, and you've practiced it with your practice partner. Visualize that being a success. Practice it being a success. Then when you get to the interview and the setting is a little bit more relaxed and it's a little bit more open, you're going to nail it. The interview itself, you have to be very cognizant of how you're showing up. And especially in the first few moments, you want to make sure you have upright body posture. You want to make sure you're leaning in when you go to shake their hand. In this environment, you want to ask them, is it okay for me to shake your hand? I just want to be cognizant of the current environment, and then lean in. The other thing you want to do is make sure if you're a person who has a lot of stress, relax your body before you go in there. And one way you can do that is to do conscious breathing. One of the ones that we recommend is a 5-5-7, which is you inhale for 5, you hold for 5, and then you exhale for 7. That longer time on the exhale is important because it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which will detensify you. Bring useful information. Have your homework that you did on the company itself. Have your resume in front of you. Bring your practice questions and how you answered them with you. And so how do you answer the questions? Think of the word STAR. The situation, the task, the action, and result. So on the Tiger project, I had a really tough schedule. And by working with my team, we worked overtime and saved schedule by 2 weeks. Measurable results resonate with hiring managers. How can you communicate your measurable results in the next interview? Something to think about.
Wow, that was a whole lot of information. Hopefully you've been taking notes, because when I tell you you are getting gold here, you are getting gold. We have both been on both sides of the table, interview and interviewee, and we have both an extensive amount of research and experience in the area. David, thank you so much for those examples. So if you've been sitting here and you're listening to all the things, because we've given you a whole lot to think about, but you do not take action, then it's pointless that you were here to begin with. We are both coaches, and this comes from coaching. If you are taking in all this information, but you do not act on any of it, then you've just wasted your time. We don't want that. So action steps, what we would love to encourage you to do is pick one thing, just one thing that we have discussed today. And we've given you a whole lot. We've talked about interviews, we've talked about preparation, we've talked about presence, we've talked about posture, we've talked about decreasing your stress, and coming in a relaxed manner. But pick one of these things and commit to doing it in the next 24 to 48 hours. Why? Because if you wait longer than that, and I know that it's Saturday, but if you wait until Monday, you'll forget the excitement or anticipation of, oh my goodness, yes, this was such good information, I want to apply this. If you wait until Monday to put one of these things into action, then it's going to slip out of your mind and you're just going to continue to do what you've always done. So what kind of action steps do we have? Let's give an example for each of the topics that we covered today. In one-on-ones, practicing your ask. This applies for interview skills too. Practice, practice, practice. Even if you don't have a one-on-one or an interview scheduled at this moment, I want you to write down what is the ask that you would love to get. Maybe it's, I want to get my foot in the door at company Y. Practice it. Practice active listening. Partner up for feedback. Active listening means we're not just listening to respond, but we're listening to understand. And for example, I hear that you said this. What I think that means is A, B, C, and add to the thought so that you're extending the thought, you're validating that you heard what they said, you're demonstrating understanding, and you're adding value.
And so a couple more, it's critical that you choose one and stick with it. If you're listening to this and writing notes, this simply becomes a teaching and a sharing of information. For this to really add value to you, take something and make it a behavior. And so one of the things I like to say is make it a SMART action, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So if you choose to do the one for recruiting, notice there's specific measurable things. You're going to revise 3 statements on your resume with results-based actions and correlate 3 skills when, by the end of this week. You are more likely to succeed at achieving a goal or a new behavior if you put a time-bound stamp on it. much like us in preparing this free webinar for today, we set the date last Saturday, and it behooved us to prepare content for today. Interviewing, write those 3-star responses: situation, task, action, result. Responses to 3 predicted questions and practice with your partner this week. Another important thing about your responses is conciseness. Myself included, I tend to be verbose. If you ask the interviewer how many questions they're going to have, if they say we have an hour and they're going to ask 10 questions, one thing to practice is tell your story in 3 or fewer sentences. How can you shorten what you're saying for the maximum impact?
Fantastic. So I would like to encourage you to pop in the chats. What action step are you going to work on? Can be anything that we've discussed today, but by popping in the chat, even if you're not appearing on video, it's a little elevated accountability because you've shared it with David and myself and anyone else who happens to check into the chat. Write it down. Pair up with your accountability partner. Now, a word on accountability partners. A spouse or family member is rarely a good accountability partner. Why? Well, for starters, every single one of us has blind spots. We do not see ourselves objectively, and we do not see the people that we love objectively because we are emotionally attached to the people who we have relationships with. So an accountability partner that's a spouse might come across as nagging to us, or we might internalize it and it could actually decrease our confidence rather than improving our confidence. So a great accountability partner is someone who can give you blunt, direct, honest feedback. And even though that might not be what you want to hear, the best accountability partner is going to tell you what you need to hear to improve so that you can constructively improve for the next time. It's not the person who's going to just say, oh, yes, yeah, oh, David, you did such a great job. There's nothing you can do to improve. Like that would be a worthless accountability partner. So make sure you set that up. And I'm going to go ahead and let you talk about what's upcoming.
Sure. So we like to talk about skin in the game. We absolutely appreciate you coming into the free webinar today. But it's kind of like this. Your chances of success increase with you putting skin in the game. It's kind of like this. I'll use exercise as an analogy. If you were to buy some product from some company and do an exercise video for 6 weeks in your own home, how likely are you to show up and do that for 6 weeks as compared to if you were paying a personal trainer $100 an hour or something like that? If you're paying the person, you're going to go to that first, right? Because that's your own money, your own investment. And from experience, there's no better place to invest than in yourself. And so what we're offering is a deeper dive. We're calling it the Oil and Gas Professionals Group Coaching. So this really was a training. A training is where we just share information and you take notes, and then maybe you never look at this material ever again. But if you're interested in true behavior change, something that will wind up sticking with you so that you can reprogram your subconscious for these new skill sets, highly recommend considering group coaching or even one-on-one coaching. And so what we're going to focus on in this group is everything we've talked about and what we're going to talk about. Relationship capital, we'll dive deeper. One-on-ones and interviewing, actually having an exchange, a dialogue between ourselves. We'll also talk about advanced soft skill development. How would you approach business development and sales? How do you build up your confidence? How do you get better at communication? And then how do you get better at leadership? If you have an inkling of interest in any of these things, reach out to us. Email myself at david@JenGaudetCoaching.com or comment in the chat. We look forward to hearing from you.
And we are also offering another one of these workshops to deliver content on building new skills, setting yourself apart. Just like David just talked about some of the deeper dive things in our group coaching that we're offering, the thing that sets people apart in a downturn, or especially if you're transitioning to another industry where maybe your technical skills are not where they want to be, you might be the subject matter expert in oil and gas. However, if you're moving into energy, those technical skills, that subject matter expert, some may transfer, but most likely you're not going to be the expert. And maybe you have 20 years in one industry, but you no longer have that advantage of 20 years. But what you could have are the critical soft skills that really emphasize leadership. I can go in, I have the network, and I have business development skill set. I'm confident sitting across the table with a potential client and selling service. I am able to communicate, and I'm flexible and adaptable to learning new skills. It's really important when you're switching industries, or even if you're getting into a completely different role, that you emphasize the soft skills and the other benefits that you bring to the table. Because I can speak to you from a couple of different industries, and David from oil and gas as well. When you have the critical soft skills, those are much more challenging to learn because it requires habit change and practice. When you have technical skills many times, as long as you're open to learning, and maybe, yes, you might not command the exact same salary that you had when oil and gas was booming, because the reality is when oil and gas starts hiring again, the salaries are not going to be at the top of the cycle, they're going to be back at the bottom. So just because I made $500,000 last year doesn't mean that next year my next job in oil and gas is going to pay that. It's gonna come down. Just like real estate cycles and stock market, it's a cyclical thing. So if you're open to, okay, I understand I have 25 years in oil and gas, however, I'm really excited about renewable energy, for example. And I also bring the confidence, the adaptability, and flexibility, and I'm open to learning the technical side. That's going to sell you 100% every step of the way. So next week, we are going to dive into what to do, what new skills to build, how to look at those new skill sets and set yourself apart.
And another thing is, why is that important for you? You may be thinking, well, I'm not sure if I can do all that. You might, by building your skills and relational capital, you will be able to identify opportunities that you won't be able to find online. I actually have a client who just had a recent success and landed a job in a similar manner. So it really is about who you know and learning about the opportunities before they're made public. And then, it's in parallel for business development as well. You want to be the first person there and learn about the things that no one else learns about. And your opportunities might not be with the kind of large, well-known company. It could be with a startup. It could be with a smaller engineering firm. So who do you know? Who do you know who knows those people? It's so important to be able to network really well because those hidden W-2s may be out there, and these skills will help you find them.
Perfect. So we are about to move into the questions section. And this is my absolute favorite quote of all times. In fact, it is the first page of my best-selling book. The secret to change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. That was Socrates. It has withstood the test of time. And a lot of times when we find ourselves, either we've been let go, we're on reduced full-time schedule, we're afraid we're gonna get let go, fear can take over, and we start to focus on doing the same thing. But the reality is, this pandemic and this downturn has produced a blank canvas for us. It's an opportunity. Disruption provides opportunity. And either we can focus on the old and see the problems, or we can focus on the opportunity and find the solution. And so, wise words we live by, and it's so important when we're trying to build new habits, build new skill sets, because it truly is a process. It's not like you watch this video today and boom, you've got all the things. No, we're gonna look for 1% improvement. We're gonna look at practicing because something might be very uncomfortable the first time. Just like imagine speaking on stage. 93% of people are afraid to public speak from stage. However, if you speak on stage 10 times, all of a sudden, a lot of that fear is down because it's become practiced. practice helps you become more comfortable with the things that you're most uncomfortable with. So that's kind of the very big take home. If you take nothing else away today, it's find the thing that you're most uncomfortable with and start practicing it. Because that's what's really going to elevate you and elevate your confidence, and it'll waterfall into all the other things that you're uncomfortable with at the moment. You take that big bite, the thing that really you dread, and you improve that strength, then everything else becomes so much easier.
So thank you to everyone in the audience who had sent questions throughout the week. I do have a couple of those here.
Well, and before we dive into that, if anybody is present, wants to ask a question based off of the content, either feel free to unmute yourself or to type in the chat your question if you don't want to appear. That's totally fine. Otherwise, what we would like you to do is truly, answer all of your questions. And while we see that, if you want to raise your hand and go live, that's another option as well. So we'll start with some of the pre-prepared ones while y'all get your questions for us. And when you're ready, pop them in the chat, raise your hand. We will bring you on live. Want to go with this question?
Sure.
Oh, we got this one. This one is probably one of the most common questions that are asked. I've come into contact with a lot of companies, but they're just not serious about hiring. I mean, they bring me to the interview, but they really are just testing the waters.
So I do think that some companies will do some pre-looks at folks, and maybe they won't be hiring for that exact moment. One of the things is to ask what their current needs are, right? And we see this a lot in oil and gas and chemical. Well, we want to be prepared for when the projects do start to come back in. And so if you're in the interview and you kind of get that response, it's really what it is. It's an opportunity to get as much intelligence as you can. If you've done your homework and you start asking about the culture and you're getting intel about what specific needs they have in the position itself and why or what would make this opportunity become open, that'll position you for later on. But it is a thing that companies may go out and interview, and they may not have the position available immediately.
Another question that I think we kind of touched base on a little bit in the presentation, but the company wants 25 years of experience in the industry, but they only want to pay for 5 years of experience.
So it depends to me. If you're going into another industry and you don't have the specific technical skills, say you're going from oil and gas to a transmission or distribution or energy or water or one of those other industries, if your resume is not demonstrating any kind of correlation whatsoever, they are going to take a hard look at that, right? If you're applying for the equivalent, if you have 25 years experience and you're a SME in oil and gas, and you're trying to apply as a 25-year experience in an industry that you don't have that knowledge and that skill set, the reality is you're going to have to take a back seat to get back into that industry.
So I'd also like to address something that that came up a couple of times, and that's the employers are treating the candidates unprofessionally.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to share something that is very unpopular. If you have noticed that an employer is addressing you in an unprofessional manner, that is because that is how you showed up to the table. Let me explain. If you're on the phone with an employer or prospective employer and you're doing a video interview and your voice is really soft and maybe your shoulders are hunched, they can hear that on the other side of the line. That is not commanding respect. This is about presence. However, if you're on the phone or on the video and your shoulders are back, you're sitting up tall, you're leaning in, and you're smiling, and this is something that a lot of people find a hard time with, but when you smile, it gives a different vibe across the phone. Because what we say in our communication, the words are only 7 to 10% of the equation. Our body language and our tone are so much more important. And so if you're delivering like this, and if we delivered this like in this manner, y'all would not have still been here on this call. But because we are excited about this and we're engaged, we're demonstrating that, and that commands respect. The same happens across the table with the employer. If you walk into the interview and you dress the part and you make eye contact and you ask, listen, I know that we're in a pandemic. Is it okay if I shake your hand? And they say yes, and you have a firm handshake, and you are engaged and excited to be there, they are going to show you the same respect, because what has happened is you have powerfully presented yourself, and that commands respect. If you're finding employers are just kind of pushing you across under the rug, or they're not giving you the respect, just because either you're not showing it to them or you're not showing it to yourself. It all starts with us.
And a lot of that first impression is true. If a candidate comes in and they look, or I get the sense that they're not here to bring it, then I'm going to hear them differently in the rest of the interview. Right? That first impression is critical. I know it sounds very kind of cliche or what have you, but it really matters. And it's one thing to talk about it and hear it, and that's why when we talk about this here is sharing information. You're hearing it, but it's a whole other thing to practice it and get good at it. Coming from personal experience, I'm an extreme introvert. I have to use techniques to manage my energy and how I show up. Even for this morning, there's practice, there's preparation for me to show up. And then for me, I'm going to go for a walk alone with Jen for a few hours to recharge. And so I know a lot of us, and not everyone is an introvert, but if you are, I'm telling you, you can get good at these skill sets. It is something that is learnable.
I want to say something to that. I have known David for quite some time, and even 5 years ago, he was really withdrawn. He didn't make eye contact. He didn't show up powerfully. Coaching has made him, or I don't want to say made him, but has facilitated his ability to show up with presence and powerfully, and it's helped him to ascend like upward mobility in his own career. It's helped him to really elevate his teams and to really command that respect. And now he presents in front of a room full of people, something that he never would have done 5 or 10 years ago. And he does it with very, very good command and presence of the room. You would not recognize him. And so when he talks about practice and he talks about getting the crucial feedback and the right accountability and the right support, is so critical. Those things can be developed. Confidence is a skill that can be developed. Presence can be developed. Presentation skills can be developed. It requires action.
And so why are we here on a Saturday morning? I've lived this. I've lived through 3 downturns, and I'm passionate about this. I've been able to make changes through doing coaching and showing up and changing behaviors that's made me and got me into the position that I'm in. And I want to share that with you guys, because I believe that every single person in this room, if you practice and you make these things a behavior, you will show up differently. You will command professional presence, but you do have to do the work. It cannot be done for you, and you can't just passively learn it and expect it to take. It is a behavior.
Can I ask you the next question?
Certainly.
Okay, what are the make it or break it questions in an interview, and how to handle them effectively?
So to me, what would be make it or break it is if you did the action steps from this presentation and you practice a bunch of different questions, but then you get to the interview and they ask you a question that you didn't expect them to answer and maybe you didn't prepare. So one way I could say to get better at that is with your practice partner, ask a bunch of questions and then have them throw in a curveball, something that you don't expect them to ask, and find a person who will really challenge you and practice the challenge. By practicing curveballs, you'll be better at answering curveballs when they come up in meetings. So it absolutely boils down to preparation, but it's how are you preparing? Are you preparing by just going to a 1-hour free webinar, writing down some notes, and throwing the notebook in the back of your bookshelf, or are you going to take one thing today and make it a new behavior? That's the difference for success.
Let's give some examples of curveballs, because you may be thinking that it has to do with engineering, but it might not have to do with anything in your industry. A curveball might look like, hey, what was the absolute best RBI of any Major League Baseball player in the 2018 series? Yeah, we don't expect that in an interview. Well, maybe I would in my prior career in sports medicine, but you don't expect that question, and you may not know. And what they're doing is they're throwing you a curveball to look at how you respond. So if you just BS them, and you know you're BSing them, they're gonna know that, because guess what, Google. If they're throwing you a curveball, they know the answer already. And so the worst thing you can do is BS, just throw out a BS answer. How you handle yourself when you hear it, if you take pause and say, you know, I don't know the answer to that, but I can find it for you.
And then, have you done your research? Go look up tough questions. Go look at the companies that are out there that do real well, and look up what are the tough questions that they ask. And then maybe do this, write them all down on little sheets of paper, put them into like a bowl, and then have your practice partner randomly pick one and then ask them to you. And then do that once a week for several weeks. And then tell me about the results and how they've changed the next time you interview.
But I am going to interject with regards to the crazy questions that might not be industry specific. The absolute worst thing you can do is get agitated in the interview. What are you asking me? This has nothing to do with it. That is not a good response in any way, shape, or form, because what they're testing you for is how you operate under stress. They're looking for the soft skills in you. And if you're thrown for a curveball and you have a negative reaction, what is that going to tell them? Well, they don't know how to handle constructive criticism. They don't know how to handle adversity. And is that the person I want representing me in front of my clients?
Exactly. That's what's going on through the employer's mind is, if I ask this person this question, hey, can you do this task? Well, why is that even relevant? And they immediately throw up, you know, I don't want to deal with this. Then that's a telling of their behavior, right? And that's what we're looking for as hiring managers. We're asking questions in a way to understand how you will behave. And a really good hiring manager will try to trick you, right? Because that's what we're trying to learn. We want to learn you as a person. And then that's why, you know, for some positions, they bring you in on kind of a temporary basis, because a hiring manager doesn't necessarily get everything they need in an interview. And so some of these things are maybe tough, but think of it if you owned your own business and you wanted to hire someone into your business, and you've put everything on the line to make that business, you're going to want to make sure anyone that comes in to represent you is going to represent you in the right way. And if you show up in the interview and you are representing yourself in the right way, and you do that by knowing your core values, and you know that company's core values, that really is the heart of this thing. I think and I've interviewed a ton of people in the last 5 years. A lot of things that gets me to shut down as a hiring manager is the presence isn't there. How they initially respond to a question sets up a red flag. Whoa, they responded this way initially. Why did they respond that way? And then we talk about it afterwards with the panel. Hey, did you notice this? Oh yeah, I did, but I thought what they meant was this. And so the purpose for the panel is the different other hiring managers have different perspectives, because they're all observing for different things. Because it's a serious decision for us as a hiring manager. We want the right person who's going to add value to the company, right? Especially now in the industry, with it being just that harder, you know, it's ultra competitive right now. So.
Yeah, so I would like to take one of the questions. How are successful candidates chosen? And David's kind of alluded to this already. I can tell you that I work with a multitude of different industries as a business strategist. And the things that across all industries are most important are you flexible? Are you adaptable? Are you willing to learn? And are you set in your ways? If we detect as a hiring manager that you are set in your ways and not open to something new or open to learning or open to collaborating in a way that maybe you haven't before, that is a shut door. Because no matter what industry you are looking at, if you are inflexible, or if it's your way or the highway and that is picked up upon, that does not make for us a good team dynamic. We as business owners, we as hiring managers in every industry see that as this is going to be a team morale problem. This is going to be an ongoing issue for years to come. So flexibility, adaptability, willing to learn, and willing to meet and close the gap. Those are soft skills. Those are like negotiating skills. The ability to compromise are especially key. Even in you are the subject matter expert, when it comes to safety, always safety first. But if there's another way to do something that might be more efficient, but you've been doing it this way for 25 years, well, guess what? In 25 years, technology has changed. Things have changed. And maybe someone else has had a tremendous amount of results in a more efficient manner. And so being open to that conversation is important to us. When we hear, nope, it's my way or the highway in any of our answers, that's a closed door. So when we're talking about how successful candidates are chosen, we're looking for the people who, yes, have the technical expertise and the skill sets that we're looking for. We're also looking for the people who can communicate and who don't just listen to respond. And what that looks like is you're listening to what I'm saying right now, and you're saying, yeah, but, and you're waiting to interject your answer. That's listening to respond. Listening to understand is, I'm hearing that she's saying that soft skills are really important, and it's important to be adaptable, flexible, and willing to compromise in some of these circumstances. Comprehension, listening to understand, is applying that and saying, well, how can I now add value in that way?
So we're right a little bit over time. We want to be respectful of your time. If you have to go, we perfectly understand. But if you have some questions that have come up throughout the presentation, please type them into the chat now so we can discuss them.
Or raise your hand.
Or raise your hand.
Or unmute if you would prefer to unmute. And if you would be so kind, if you have been here for the whole time, or even if you came in late, what is one takeaway or one thing that you learned today in spending the last hour with us? That would be incredibly helpful as we design our next topic next week, so we can focus on what is most important to you and what are the topics that are on your minds. So if you would be so kind as to give us feedback in that way, type into the chat, what's your big aha? What is the one thing that you liked the most? And also, if you want to give us insight into what is the topic that you'd like to hear, or where would you like to go next? Because we are listening to our community as this goes and as this progresses, and we're here to serve you. As you've heard, David's been through 3 of these. He's been on every side of this when it comes to being let go, when it comes to hiring, when it comes to being the one trying desperately to find a job. He's been through that. And he's very passionate about serving this community because it is exceptionally challenging right now.
Yeah, that's pretty much says it. So would love to hear from you guys. Send an email. If you just had some questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you're curious about what is coaching, I heard the term, but I don't understand. I think of coach as a baseball coach. Professional coach is a little bit different. I'd be happy to spend 30 minutes with you just to have a conversation and learn a little bit more about you and what you may be looking for.
Yeah, so if that is your question, we'll just address this really quickly too in a very high level way. We all know what we need to do. We all hear the things that we're supposed to do. Maybe we know them and have done them inconsistently. Coaching is because common sense is not common practice. If you think about any area, and I tend to coach on confidence and on relational capital, presentation skills, and those kind of things, because I work with a lot of business owners. Phil has a question, we'll bring them on. And coaching takes you one step at a time and helps you to develop that, and we stack the habits on top of each other. So all of a sudden, you may be extremely uncomfortable in front of a group of people, but after a couple of weeks, we work together on the skill sets, and you're able to walk into a room and deliver that presentation. Okay, Phil, let's go ahead and unmute yourself. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hello, guys. I just wanted to ask you if you provide any job search strategies. In this market, it's really tough, particularly in my past skill set, was tied to drilling. And what does a person do in a market like this? Well, I don't know if this falls underneath your umbrella of services, but do you primarily just do interview coaching, or do you also do job search strategies to help people?
I mean, I think kind of like we mentioned in the presentation is who is in your network, I guess would be the first question. And how can you expand on your in-person network to start meeting more people?
Mm-hmm.
So for us, we're in different networking groups. So what are the networking groups, if you're not in them already, that you can get into to start meeting more people for the industries that you're trying to get into for the first time, or to meet more people in your current industry?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the ways you do that is it's organic, right? You've got to go out and meet people. But in terms of a service do we have
Yeah, we're not recruiters.
We're not a recruiting agency, no.
So Phil, I know you asked for the replay. Last week we went in depth about the importance of building relational capital. So I think you'll find a lot of value in that replay, because really it is about expanding who you know. Many times for example, you mentioned drilling. In your industry, most of the people you know are in your industry, and most of those people may have been even let go. And so you have lost your leverage. You don't have people in companies that can get you in the door. What we encouraged last week, and you'll see this in the replay, is how to expand in other areas, in other professional areas, because you never know. It might be your lender or your banker who actually has your next connection for your next opportunity, and not to shut the doors on other types of professions. And I'll give a classic example. I am a professional coach. I have a coaching business and a consulting business. We are also real estate investors. And I spent 20 years in sports medicine. So I come from sports medicine and human performance, which is completely different than business coaching. However, I've run businesses all along the way and been a mentor. So when I first shifted to coaching, nobody wanted to talk to me because they assumed I didn't know anybody. But the reality is I worked with professional elite athletes for 20 years. I worked with everyone in the medical community for 20 years. And as such, I worked on people in every industry. In fact, when we moved to Houston, the bulk of my clients were executives in oil and gas companies. So what that means is I know a lot of people who can get a lot of different industries in the door. But when we think about, well, she's a coach, so she only knows coaching or she only knows healthcare, it's completely inaccurate. So I'd love to encourage you as an action step here that could be very valuable for you in your job search, is to start talking to the people who you don't normally associate with professionally about their industry and how they're handling COVID, and ask about who they know, because you might surprise yourself. Someone in your family might know someone who can connect you and get you in the door. And what David said earlier, it's not about waiting for a job to post. It's about letting everyone in your network know, hey, this is a really challenging time and I'm looking for my next opportunity, but I'm just not finding it online. Will you keep your ears to the ground and let me know when you hear something? Because I promise you, someone you know likely can connect you to your next opportunity. Someone who's already in your network might have that for you. So it really is about expanding your network. And something that has been very helpful for people in your industry particularly, there are a lot of networking groups that are traditionally for business owners, but they have people from every trade. And because we were in the Houston area, there's generally somebody in oil and gas, somebody in construction, somebody in like firms. And you might want to look at where you can get together. Like, I know there are energy professional groups that get together. There are business groups that are business oriented, but most business owners in the area have a spouse who is oil and gas related because it is such a huge industry. So thinking outside of the box and finding maybe a business networking group or another group like that is a perfect place to go explore. And there is no shame in showing up to that group. And your 30-second commercial is, hey, I'm in oil and gas. I've been let go. I'm looking for my next opportunity. And you might meet the right recruiter. You might meet the right person whose husband has just said, oh, we just had a project, and they'll have you in mind, top of mind, and you build those relationships. So those are just some outside of the box ways to do it. And like I said, our conversation last week was extensive about how to do that external networking and that building relationships.
And, Bridget asked, did that answer your question, Phil?
Yes. Yes.
So Bridget asked about active listening, which we covered in the last topic. So one of the things, Bridget, is get to where you quiet your inner mind. If when you're speaking with a person and you're listening to respond, like we said earlier, and you're framing in your mind what you're going to say next, you won't listen as attuned as you would if your mind was clear. And simply getting in the habit of keeping a clear mind. And one of the things that can help, that's helped me when I was learning this skill, is have a notepad out and make it your objective to simply write down every single word that they say. Don't think about what's coming next. Just be present in the moment, write down everything they say. And then you want to rephrase it. Hey, I think I heard you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Was that right? And when you get those details accurately, they'll say, wow, you really did hear everything that I said. And that exchange, that one thing, helps you build relationships.
Yes, we're touching on the basic human needs of, we all know food, shelter, water, the bottom of the Maslow hierarchy. Love, safety, and belonging is the very next level of the hierarchy. We are social beings, even if we are introverts, and the need to be seen and heard, it fits into the basic human psychology. And so I love what David said, and I want to add, yes, and when you're doing those things and you're hearing and you're writing down what they're saying, if you don't understand something that they said or you get curious, it is amazing when you say, I think I hear you saying this. Can you tell me more? I'm really curious about C or whatever topic, and that opens them up more. This is the open-ended conversation that we're talking about, and you get a more, it's about going vertical instead of going horizontal. So when we talk about going horizontal, it's keeping everything real superficial. If you're an introvert, you don't like superficial conversation. I mean, that's just it. You don't talk about the weather and all the meaningless stuff. You really want to get to the nuts and bolts of things, and you want to have that deep connection. So by asking that, oh, I'm really interested. You said this. I'd like to learn more. I'm curious. Could you tell me more? You're getting more vertical, and you're getting deeper into the conversation where you can find that value connection or that shared experience that opens up the relationship. Because once you have gotten deeper in that shared like experience or that curiosity, when they feel truly heard and validated, they are much more open to reciprocity. And so what happens is that all of a sudden when you say, you know, I'm really, really interested in this, and I came to this meeting, and be honest and authentic, I came to this meeting really hoping that you could be the person to connect me to my next opportunity. You know, I'm kind of in a tight spot and I'm looking for my next job. But I'm really intrigued by this conversation and I'd like to learn more. Let's schedule another time. And that they remember. Because you've gone deeper into that conversation, they remember. And Bridget says, I'm not an introvert. I get you. That's this chick right here. And my brain goes 20 million miles a moment. I write everything down to focus. Because my brain is, I'm a creative. And so I have a lot of like big vision creative ideas, and I'm very strategic as well. My mind does the same thing. So when you do what David said and you focus on writing what's being said, it helps you to be fully present and to kind of quiet all the extra ideas.
So thank everybody for asking the questions. Did anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up while we're still here?
No.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Really passionate about this stuff. Next week's topic, another free workshop, will be on building skill sets. And again, if you guys are interested in just having a conversation, learning a little bit more what coaching is all about, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Y'all have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.